think a lot of people were feeling that way when we got started around 2016, that, people were more interested in hospitality events and lifestyle events. And something we always say at the Bridge is hospitality first. So, you have Vanity Fair saying we're the world's best garden party, which I then changed to the world's best garden party with cars. But, it's about having fun. It's about actually enjoying yourself. And I'm curating cars for the Bridge. I'm looking for the best of the best. I'm looking for weird and interesting. And then I'm looking, when things get really humming, as to where it's going to fit in this year's kind of world of the Bridge, what it's going to look like from a visual perspective. That was the Saturday that was canceled. We still had events to go on Sunday, and we had a wonderful Friday. And people generally come up on Thursday if they're showing cars. So everyone was around still. And I remembered starting to get these texts Saturday morning. We're having a car party over here. We're having a party over here at the house we rented. We're at our friend's house over here. We're going to do a rain drive over here. And it was so heartening to hear that this community had stuck together through what I thought was going to be a really difficult time. Hi, I'm Jeff Einhorn, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
It's one thing to appreciate cars. It's another to create culture. It's another to fight for the future of culture. But today's guest sits squarely in the middle of all of those worlds. And Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You are not that far away in the calendar from what some have argued is one of the most exclusive, fascinating events in the automotive world. We have, this is the first time that you've been on this program, but I know it will not be the last. Let's talk a little bit about the Bridge. Maybe
Sure.
You can start off by giving our audience a bit of a bird's eye view of what that looks like and really what makes it so unique.
Okay. Well, the Bridge is basically what happens when you get a blank slate to create the kind of event that, you'd want to go to if you had spent many of your childhood years waking up very early and going to car shows and being nervous that your car was being judged. And then you try to go get lunch and all there is a hot dog stand. And you're sitting in back of your car all day on lawn chairs and waiting to go home. And, the Bridge was basically my reaction to that when we were able to start fresh with an entirely new concept, which is something that has really taken hold, not just in the United States, but abroad as well. And I'm not saying that we're responsible for it. I think a lot of people were feeling that way when we got started around 2016, that, people were more interested in hospitality events and lifestyle events. And something we always say at the Bridge is hospitality first. So, you have Vanity Fair saying we're the world's best garden party, which I then changed to the world's best garden party with cars. But, it's about having fun. It's about actually enjoying yourself. And it's not a competition because, competition can be exciting. It doesn't necessarily make for a great place to spend quality time with friends or to catch up with people or meet new people. And so what we've done is kind of create and foster this by invitation only event that now occurs basically over a 3-day weekend in September every year, where folks can come, they can make new friends, they can catch up with old, they can share a glass of wine, they can have multiple incredible meals, sometimes multiple meals just on the same Saturday afternoon, and really enjoy themselves. And that's something different, something we didn't see before, I think. Certainly not when I was growing up in this. And, I can't remember anything like this in the 90s. Or in the early 2000s, frankly, until the Quail got started as a gathering of friends.
That'd be the only equivalent, right? I mean, what goes on there on the Friday afternoon and just outside of Pebble Beach it reminds me a little bit about what you're talking about. And it has its own flair to it. It is it represents what car culture is today. Both of these events.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think it's something new. I think it's something different. I think it's something that, it's easier to enjoy, especially if you are car culture adjacent, if you're someone's wife or partner or girlfriend or just a good friend who, is a casual appreciator of this stuff, but isn't necessarily so diehard, it's not all that fun to go to an event with 45 of the same cars lined up and everybody inspecting in little hats and clipboards, what lug nuts were used, at least not for the guest. And the idea with this is that everybody has a good time. It's easy. Frankly, the world's hardest thing is to make something hard look easy. But, because it's such a labor of love, it doesn't feel hard ever.
How did your involvement with the bridge begin? Take me back to that.
Sure. So I had been speaking with Bridgehampton for years about having some type of event go on there. Racing in Bridgehampton goes back to as far as anywhere else in the United States. If you look at early racing in the United States in the early 1900s, it's in Bridgehampton, frankly. There are a few other spots, but that's one of the main ones. And I had been wanting to do something there. I mean, forget the fact that it's a beautiful location and the history of racing. It's a place that people want to be. And I find that having events where people want to be makes it a heck of a lot easier to have a great event. So I had been speaking with the town, but I could not get a connection to what is now our third partner, Bob Rubin. And Bob owns the club, the Bridge, which was the former racetrack. And I had been dying to get up there. And at a chance encounter in 2015 with Shameen Abbas, who is now my business partner, I mentioned this to her that I had been wanting to do this, but I couldn't get in touch with this Bob Rubin fellow. Well, unbeknownst to me, she actually represented Bob Rubin. Shameen does public relations. And I get a call, I guess about a week later, asking to have lunch with him out of nowhere. And it went fabulous. And the rest is basically history. Bob is a deep gearhead. I mean, this is a guy who owned a 250 GTO, bird cages, Maserati 250Fs, and raced them. Actually walked the walk and didn't just collect these things. So to have Bob as, not only a partner and a backer, but also a visionary with us is something that's been incredibly helpful. And Shameen as well. I mean, Shameen's take on things is different than mine and different than Bob's as well. She comes from a different background, but her experience in putting, ultra high net worth events on around the world is, I think, unparalleled at this point.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Bob is actually the son of a mechanic, and has a deep obsession and has had everything from Corvettes to Mustangs to Ferraris to, now he's involved in art and architecture and exhibitions, and that points a little bit to the Bridge because there's this very intentional blending of design, architecture, and the automobile. Why do you think that pairing resonates so deeply, Jeff?
Ooh. Well, I mean, at its core, they're all elements of design, whether it's mechanical or industrial design or architecture. And I think folks who appreciate one generally appreciate others as well. I think you can say the same about watches and cars, that there's a design element, there's a mechanical element, there's an industrial element to all of these things that draws people together. And, you can be an expert in one, and as I said before, a casual appreciator of another. And for the Bridge itself, we try to make the barriers to entry very, very low so that you can come in and enjoy something even if you don't know a heck of a lot about it.
Yeah, well said. The selection of cars is always, frankly, jaw-dropping from what I've seen. Can you take us inside the curation process? What's the philosophy behind what gets invited?
Sure. It can be a little bit messy. So one of the things that I grew up with was there was always a celebration. This is the 25th anniversary of this. This is the 50th anniversary of, this Le Mans win. And those are all important events. Those are all significant. They're all interesting. But frankly, for an event that occurs in mid-September every year, by the time you get there, everyone who goes to these things has already seen all of these cars. And I'm not really interested in putting out what everyone else has already seen that year, or at least in the way that they've already seen that year. So what I end up doing is, starting early on in the year, whether it's at Moda or Amelia Island, is I start kind of picking up different cars that I think could be interesting later. It's like putting together a collage. You cut out a color from a magazine that you think maybe you're going to want to use later in something. And it takes months and months of just kind of picking up cars that I know, whether they're, a 1930s Duesenberg Model J, which is coming this year, or not usually a car that I would pick, up to, Bizzarinis or, modern day supercars. The idea is I kind of pick them up along the way until I find something that is interesting so that I can tell a story, a vignette, in a way that is visual in nature. So you can come and appreciate the whole event and not spend time reading signs. In fact, I don't use placards for the cars. I don't want people to sit there and be bent over, hunched over, trying to read them the entire time. I want people to talk, and I want them to understand that cars are necessarily related to each other, not because someone's telling you they are, but because they look like they might be. And so for the bridge, when you're talking about, different vignettes, something I did a number of years ago was I got, it was like 7 or 8 cars in mint green. They were all mint green Porsches. We had them all together, and they were kind of in this like rolling hill area on the course. And it just resonated with people. They understood that it was, weird and cool and different, and that was the unifying fact for all of them. So we do a lot of painting and color at the bridge, whether it's paint to sample Porsches of a particular color, or last year I just had blue. We just did a sea of blue cars of all different makes, everything from 1950s Ferraris again up to modern supercars. And people really get it. And it's an interesting and different thing to look at. So to go back to your question, when I'm curating cars for the bridge, I'm looking for the best of the best. I'm looking for weird and interesting. And then I'm looking, when things get really humming, as to where it's going to fit in this year's kind of world of the bridge, what it's going to look like from a visual perspective.
It's amazing. All of this from the mind of a guy who grew up in the Detroit area, right? In the shadow of the big three.
I didn't grow up in Detroit. You grew up in Detroit?
Well, I grew up in Detroit. I thought you did as well.
No, I grew up in New Haven.
Oh, okay. Hang on. We're going to scratch that part of the, sorry, never mind. We'll actually cut that out. Okay.
Okay.
I thought you grew up in Detroit.
No.
I read that you were a Detroiter. Okay.
Nope. Great city though.
So where did all this come from you personally? Your background is as diverse as it is impressive: law, media, and now a deep dive into collector cars. Where did your personal car story begin?
Ooh. I think like a lot of people, it started with a parent, and it just kind of took hold. My father had 3 kids, and he tried with all 3 of us to see, which of us would love vintage cars. For him, it was Austin Healey's, and for him, it took hold in me. And so I grew up restoring one in particular. I took the car to my prom. I drove it around. I took my first girlfriends around in that car, and I drove it without him knowing also. And it just grew in me. I enjoyed the not just the driving, because Austin Healey's aren't particularly good at being cars. They're good at being beautiful. But I love especially with that car, the reaction that it got from other people, the joy it brought to them when you drove by, that they would smile or give you the thumbs up. And it wasn't obnoxious. They just generally felt good to see you. And that's a great feeling. And I think that is something inside me that really that reacted to vintage cars. Another side of it is just the driving. I mean, I personally just love to drive. A couple of years ago, I went out with a friend to the West Coast, and he had bought a 73.5 Porsche, 1973.5 911E. And we, spent a week driving it back across country. And that's a trip I'll never forget. And that type of, camaraderie that's just shared over the fact that you're driving a car back is something that can't be replicated in so many other hobbies. And so, for me, cars are a way to connect with other people.
You've had a front row seat to the changes in the collector car space. How is the market shifting? especially with younger generations and maybe even the rise of digital platforms?
Yeah, well, there's certainly a couple worries there. I mean, first, I think everybody sees that there's a shift to much later cars now than we were all used to. I mean, for a long time it was 50s, 60s, early 70s, and anything built outside of that was really just kind of a used car. That mentality and now the Radwood era has really shifted, and people love, and I love them too, but cars from the 90s and the early 2000s, that market is hot, and I don't think anyone sees it going anywhere. There's also, to address your digital point, those cars are still, for the most part, you can work on them, and mechanics that we know can work on them. Certainly there are issues with computers that need to be fixed from cars from the 90s, and parts that can be no longer available and difficult to source, but it's at least possible. And I think we see at the beginning of the 2000s kind of the end of that, where it's very difficult for mechanics without specialized equipment. For instance, if you're working on a Ferrari, you need a Leonardo machine, or a Maserati, in order to, say you're going to change the clutch on an F1 transmission. You're kind of stuck if you don't have one of those machines. So I think what we're seeing is it getting really white hot around cars that still can be worked on by anyone, from these old school mechanics to newer ones, without needing this specialized machinery. And I don't think we're going to see people go away from that at all.
Yeah, it's one thing to work on a wrench on a vehicle. It's another to look at a software-defined vehicle, as an example.
Yeah, and God forbid there isn't software defined for your car, or you can't find the machine. Or I mean, I have a friend right now who, we both have E39 M5s, and he's trying to reprogram one of the computers right now, and was looking for a laptop from the early 2000s so that he'd get the right port so it would connect to the car. That's not an issue, obviously, you have with a 60s Corvette.
Yeah, for sure. What makes a great what makes a great collector car? Is it rarity, story, design, or something less tangible?
For me, that's a highly personal question, but for me, it's something much less tangible. It's just about how it makes you feel. We've been running Cars and Coffee events for a long time, whether through its Car Park NYC, which is our company in New York, or Bridgehampton Cars and Coffee during the Bridge on Sunday. And people always ask, does my car qualify for Cars and Coffee? And the answer is, do you think it qualifies for cars? How does it make you feel?
Right.
Is it something that you love and cherish? And obviously you don't want someone with a 2022 Honda Accord to say yes to that. But I mean, it's great that they love it. But no, it's about how it makes you feel. Does it make you feel special? Does it accentuate any of the things that, inside yourself that you feel like you want people to know? Does it reflect anything about you? Then it's interesting, at least.
It's also about storytelling, isn't it? And how storytelling enhances the value, not just financially, but emotionally. That it's a story of a car or cars, and you're creating those stories on a regular basis.
100%. And actually, to tell you more about that Austin Healey that I rebuilt as a kid, my father had a number of Austin Healey's, and at one point, his then wife said, "You need to get rid of some of these Austin Healey's," as it happens. They're a type of car where you have one and you end up with multiples. They're like puppies. Anyhow, so he sold the car, unbeknownst to me, and I actually had to go back and find the car and buy it back from the guy he sold it to, and I have it still. And I remember I surprised him with it at one of our car park events in New York City. I said, "Come down. It'd be really fun." And he hadn't seen the car in 4 or 5 years, but he had owned it for 30 something years. And, I remember he peeked around the corner. He saw the car. He said, "Is that my car? You bought me back my car?" I said, "I did not buy you back your car. I bought me back your car. You can have it.
Right.
But it's not yours because you couldn't be trusted with it." But, it is that storytelling. And so, again, is that a great car to drive? It's a nice car to drive around and see people's reaction to. It's not like driving a 70s Porsche for me. It's not like I would want to push that car in the same way. But yeah, I mean, its value to me is in the story. And I suspect that for so many people, they have something similar to tell.
Electrification is changing the automotive landscape. Do you think the emotional connection to cars will shift as we move away from combustion? And I know that that's a pendulum that's swinging at all times, one direction or the other, depending on what year it is. But we know that ultimately there will be more electrified vehicles than there are now. Does it change anything for you? What's your view on that, Jeff?
Well, certainly, electrification is inevitable. I think that at this point, there's nothing else that we could say other than just to admit that that's what's happening. The the trick with electric vehicles is making them feel fun and authentic and engaging. I guess engaging is the word I want. They're fast. They're really fast. But how many times can you go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds? How many times can you do that and still be entertained by it? These things can't be one trick pony. So I think the real engineering is going on now, and there are companies that are doing it well, where they're getting these cars, they're making them electric, and they're making them fun. Will they be collector cars? I don't know. I hope so. I hope so. But I think some of it remains to be seen at this point. There are companies doing it really well. And those are cars that, I'm thinking like, say it's a Pininfarina Battista. That is a gorgeous,
Yep.
incredible electric vehicle that I don't think anyone would say isn't a collector car. And one that I haven't driven it, but by all accounts is a phenomenal car to drive. But the difficulty, I think, is for more of the down market stuff. Some of the less expensive electric cars, how they make those fun to drive. Because let's not forget that a lot of the things that we love as collector cars now, say from the 60s, these weren't especially expensive cars back in the day. A manual Mustang, even with a GT with a V8 pack, a K code car, these aren't things that were all that expensive back then, and yet we deem them to be collectible today because they were fun to drive. So the question is whether or not these electric vehicles can jump the same hurdle.
Well, and I mean, you're a lawyer. Let's talk about legislation. There's often tension, right? There's tension between car culture and regulatory shifts. Where do you see that going?
Well, I think there's some interesting things going on right now. I'm not sure if you've spoken about Leno's Law before on the show, where in California, where they're trying to exempt certain older cars. Obviously, there's a lot of from smog testing. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges there to make sure that it goes through. But it's difficult. What do you do with some of these things? Like, sure, they could be gross polluters, but when you're talking about a community that uses their cars so sparingly, the way I look at it is this: for some of my cars, I'm a Haggerty insurance customer, and I'm not plugging anybody, but I'm just giving you an example. And I am able to get a very good rate because they are collector cars. Because they know that people who have collector cars don't drive them that much, that they don't commute in them, that they take very good care of them for the most part. And I think the same thing can be said about legislation with regard to some of these cars, that for the most part, that these are owned by people who care a heck of a lot about them, and that they don't drive them, they don't use them for work purposes. So, in discussing just that area in particular, I hope that it's something that can be resolved, because we don't want to legislate ourselves into our hobby, basically, or business being, done or impossible to live with. It can't be that every single car in California is registered in Montana. It's just not an acceptable solution. With regard to, legislation and electrification, I don't know. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a scientist. I don't know what's best for this world at this point. But I really do hope that there are people out there still making good decisions and incentivizing people to make changes when that is the appropriate thing to do. And it doesn't have to be that electric cars are your fun car or your enthusiast car. As long as things can coexist, then it's fine with me. They have to be given a chance.
Let's go back to the bridge and the evolution of collector culture. Has it become a bellwether for shifting tastes in your mind?
Well, so because of the way I put together the bridge, I try. It's possible to influence the people, obviously, through putting on a car event. Your guests come, they see what's new and what's hot, and they go out, and all of a sudden values spike. I don't really look at it that way, that I'm trying to influence anybody with the bridge other than just to have a good time. I mean, do we get under their skin? Do we, so that subconsciously they make a decision and people all of a sudden start buying more green Porsches because I had a green Porsche display? I have no doubt that it happens. It does. But I don't go around picking cars for the bridge, seeing what other shows are doing. So I think in order to get a bellwether, you have to see, okay, everyone's doing Caterhams here. People forgot about this company. Let's do it. And then you have 4 other shows, and by the time it gets to the bridge, everyone's just tired of them by that point. I'd rather just kind of pick things I think are interesting and let everyone have a good time. Maybe I'm just not thinking it through enough. Maybe I'm not considering that, but I'd rather put on a heck of a good party and, let people make their own decisions.
Is that the goal? It's just at the end of it, you want everybody to say the same thing. God, that was a heck of a good 3-day party.
Yeah, that's what I want. That's all I ask for.
That's the baseline.
That's it. That's it. And frankly, it's easier, I think, to put on a good party than it is to put on a judged event.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know what people generally like for a good party. I know how to find interesting food. I know how to have great drinks and wine and cocktails and good music. Those are things I excel at. I know the baseline that people are looking for. But when you introduce judging to an event, then in order to have a good time, they have to win. And that's not really a recipe for a good party. So yeah, we aim every year to throw a heck of a good party.
Is there a challenge of building something that's intentionally invite only, but still inviting new perspectives and new voices? What's that balance like?
It's hard. That actually is one of our biggest challenges, I think, because the bridge has always remained invite only. And, you find yourselves myopic at some points where you have a tunnel vision. You only see the people that you see. And so in order to break through and see those new perspectives or bring them to other people's attention, you have to work very hard to, break out of your comfort zone, so to speak. Bob, my partner, has been for years trying to get me to start collecting, like Trans Am cars. And there are things that I don't know anything about. But in order to do that, I have to break into an entirely new culture of racing that I'm not familiar with and start going after them. And I'm going to, and I will do it. And I think that will bring a fresh perspective to the bridge. But it's hard. You have to push yourself to do that.
I was going to ask you about the future and maybe what the future holds for it. Where do you see it going next? And is it evolving beyond an event into something bigger? Could it be different?
The challenge with any event that you put on year after year after year, we're on Bridge 9 this year, and we're already prepping for Bridge 10 next year, is to keep it fun and interesting and different. And, you can experiment with new things. There is some safety in that with the bridge because, at the end of the day, if you're throwing just a good party, people will most likely have a good time if you give them the few things that they really do want. But it's a challenge. And yeah, I mean, we have new and different things coming. We come up with crazy ideas. Some work, some don't. One year we had giant hot air balloons with our bridge bunny on them. And we had agreed to do this before we understood how much helium costs. By the way, helium is insanely expensive. And these balloons were like hot air balloon size. And we had multiples. I think we spent $30,000 on helium that year. But wow. Yeah, no, we're always willing to try new ideas to keep things fresh and interesting. There are certain things that, I think lock in the schedule in a way that I don't necessarily want to change. Friday night, we have a party for all of our collectors. Saturday is the bridge, which starts, at 2. Sunday, we have the Cars and Coffee in town, and we have Bridge of Topping Rose later on that day. I like that sequence of events because when we can give some level of continuity to everybody else with the tent poles, then they can help with supporting events. So, for instance, the 24 Hours of Montauk has come. And it's a rally that now I think is in its 5th year, I want to say. And it is phenomenal. People get so excited about this. It's a 3-hour rally with, food and prizes, and it's just very zany, and some of the highlights from the weekend participate in the event. And I don't want to own that event. I don't want to design that event. I'm so happy that it actually exists. But the only reason it exists is because we were able to give them that white space to do the event. One of the things I was told recently, and I didn't actually, I think, put it together at the time, but it's always been kind of a core principle, is you got to make the owners happy. If you make the car owners happy, everything else will fall into line. So you give them the rally, you allow the rally to happen in the way it does. You give them their own party Friday night. You throw everything you possibly can at them to make sure that their experience is seamless, because without them, we've got no show. We have no fun. We have no party. And so I'm always trying to figure out new things for them to do that kind of stretch the boundaries of what they're willing to accept. And sometimes they're not. I mean, I had wanted to do a drive-in movie during the day using other people's cars at the top of the hill on the bridge with a giant movie screen and have people go in and out of their cars. That one they did not like. That one could not happen because of that, because they just didn't want people getting in and out of their cars, and I don't blame them. But no, I mean, we are always trying to push the bounds to keep it new and fresh and exciting so that they want to come back and see, what's going to be on the top of the hill this year.
Yeah. There's a strong community component to all this. Owners, designers, creatives. Give me a few favorite stories or memories from, now that we're in Bridge 9, of previous bridges that stick in your mind.
Oh, well, there's always good ones, and there's always a few tough ones. I mean, let's start with the tough one. 2023, we had our first rain for the bridge, and what is usually a 500-person party for the collectors on Friday was shifted to a lighter version of our full event on Saturday within a matter of 48 hours. And we have never had to deal with this before. And the rain that was being forecasted was the remnants of a hurricane, basically, with 60-mile-an-hour winds. It wasn't going to be safe at all. And I remember being so wildly disappointed. Friday was unbelievable, by the way. But I remember being so wildly disappointed on Saturday, because it's like the bridge is like having your wedding every year for me. Literally, I mean, it is a year of planning for 3 days of events and one in the middle, right? So it was like my wedding ceremony getting canceled. That's how it felt. But I remember hearing, because it's, that was the Saturday that was canceled. We still had events to go on Sunday, and we had a wonderful Friday. And people generally come up on Thursday if they're showing cars. So everyone was around still. And I remembered starting to get these texts Saturday morning. We're having a car party over here. We're having a party over here at the house we rented. We're at our friend's house over here. We're going to do a rain drive over here. And it was so heartening to hear that this community had stuck together through what I thought was going to be a really difficult time. And I will say, last year was the year after the rain year. People did not hold back at all. I mean, it is such a strong community, and that's what makes it fun. I will say, we started with the first bridge, like I said, with 400 or so people and 60 cars. And I remember right after meeting Bob, and we had agreed with Shameen to push forward and actually do this. And Bob said, I think we should give people an appetizer first to see if this is going to work. I said, you're crazy. We don't need to do that. Let's go, guns a-blazing right now. Let's do this. And he said, just hang in there. He said, hold on. We're going to start slow. And by growing organically, starting small with the 400 people and getting past 3,000 people last year, and it's all still invite only, but in growing slowly and organically like that, the community that has come together is extraordinarily tight knit, and it's like a big family. It's nice. It's I'm not the head of it. I'm just a member.
It's a
I'm
big
proud to be a
wedding.
member.
It's a
Yeah,
big wedding, Jeff.
it's a big wedding. Everyone's coming to the wedding. It's my proudest
Everyone's
day of
coming
the
to the
year
wedding.
to stand there with Shameen and Bob and just to make sure that everyone is happy.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Well, it is something that I think is for car culture so critical. And I'll ask you, what role do you want to play in shaping the future of car culture? And
Oh,
maybe what's one thing you hope never changes about it?
I mean, what role do I want to play? It's like, how narcissistic do you want me to be
Well,
today?
I'm asking the question. You didn't say the role that you want to play. I'm going to ask you the question.
um, Look, I just want to throw a heck of a good party, and beyond just the bridge, Shameen and I have Car Coterie, which is an offshoot that throws
That's
bridge
right.
style events. We've been at Amelia Island twice for the hangar. Um, you know, I want to just throw a heck of a good party, and if anything, I want to throw more than one a year.
Yeah.
That's it.
Car coterie. Do you want to just take a minute to explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. So the bridge has had, knock on wood, it's had such a great impact on the community, as far at least as we're told by the other collectors. And people had been asking for more bridge style events, more hospitality first events to occur at other locations. So we had teamed up with Haggerty, and we had put on 2 years of the hangar. And the hangar was basically vintage aircraft and a lifestyle car party that occurred on the Saturday night of Amelia Island.
Yeah.
We are potentially shifting to Moda. I mean, I love both of these events. I love all these events. And if I can put on a charcuterie hangar or a bridge style event at both of them, one after another, you're going to have to prop me up with an IV. But if I can do it, I will do it. I think they're different communities. I think they're great communities. And I think that, again, I just want everyone to have a good time and to throw a great party. And I think I could throw a lot of them.
Yeah, we've had a few guests on the show, Concourse Club in Miami.
Our partners.
Okay, great. I did not know that.
Yes. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the Concourse Club. Have you had a chance to go down yet?
We did. We were invited down to the Formula One race. We did a couple of episodes down there.
Oh, that's amazing. The Pininfarina Events Campus is incredible. So Shameen and I and Aaron, who is the president,
yes,
of
we've had Aaron on the program.
I know, and he's fantastic.
He is
wildly entertaining and great, and we're good friends. We've all been working on some new events to occur with Car Coterie together with the Concours Club, with not just static events where people are at a party and having a good time and they're just looking at cars on the parked on the ground, but things in movement too. So I don't want to give away too much. I don't want to show my whole hand, but we have found a very amazing partner in the Concours Club, and they are similarly minded. They want to put together these events. They want to get things out there, and they want to have a good time.
With what you're doing and what they're doing and other similar car collector locations, there's a whole renaissance here, isn't there, Jeff?
Yeah.
I mean, this is not what I grew up with.
No, it's not, and it's not what I grew up with either. And whether it's these, whether it's these, can we cut that? Sorry about that. I didn't know my phone wasn't on Do Not Disturb. Just tell me when.
Yeah, just say whether it's the.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Whether it's these car storage facilities that are hosting events, things occurring at clubhouses, or airplane hangars. This is stuff that did not occur when you and I were kids. I'm guessing we're similarly aged, and it's fantastic that it's taking place now. But I think it's that our generation is taking ownership of the events and putting them on, and they're actually putting on the things that they would want to go to. And there's a little bit more freedom for our generation in putting those together than I think there was before. I think we're a little bit more willing to break the mold because, we're lucky enough to have it easier potentially than, the last generation did when they were doing these things.
True enough. Final thing, in your garage, what do you have that you like? What do you want that you don't have?
Okay, what do I have that I like? I have a habit of selling cars and buying them back frequently for more money than I paid for them when I sold them for. Sorry. What do I have that I like? I would say right now, my two favorite cars in the collection are, again, I had mentioned an E39 M5. That's a royal red Dynan S2 car. And I had sold that to one of my closest friends thinking in 2001 that he would just keep it forever and I would have free access to the car. And he showed me because he then sold it 6 months later. And another friend of ours bought it actually. So it was never kind of out of the friend circle, and it just sat in storage until I bought it back a few months ago. And the noises that Dynan was able to produce with BMW, just it's incredible. And for me, the car is a bit of a time machine in that it brings me back to, years and years ago, owning the car and enjoying it and seeing friends. And I love that. The other favorite car is another one that I sold and bought back, and that is a Ferrari FF. And I bought that car in January of 2021, and it's a blue posi car. And I had looked for years for a blue posi car. It's one of my favorite colors. It's a dark, non-metallic blue with Cuyo Daytona seats, so a tan leather interior. And I had the car. I bought it with 2,000 miles, and I think I put 10,000 miles onto it. And I just, I wasn't using it as much. I had gotten really into Porsches. I had a GT3 Touring. And I said, I don't need two of these things that have a lot of horsepower. And so I sold it to a podiatrist who had it for 6 months, and then I bought it back immediately. And so of the 21,000 miles in the car, I've done 19, I think, for that car.
Okay.
So, I love it. I think they're just gorgeous inside. I like that they're wildly misunderstood. It is a 650 horsepower V12 naturally aspirated Ferrari. What's not to love? It's also a wagon.
Yeah, right.
So those are my favorites right now. I have other cars. I love the cars, and it's funny to think back, thinking I only needed before one high horsepower car, because if I looked at me now, then I would probably be cracking up. But it kind of is what it is, and that's part of the hobby. It's a little bit of a sickness.
Bridge 9 takes place during the second week of September, the second weekend of September. It will be a great party, Jeff.
I hope to see you there.
Right. I would love to be there. And for my first bridge. And just thank you so much for explaining the passion and the emotion behind building this brand, because it is its own brand. And most importantly, on this show, Cars and Culture, for amplifying and personifying what car culture is.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.